Good afternoon. Welcome to the Jaybefaunt channel. I'm your host, James Fauntleroy. So good to see all of you here on this beautiful Tuesday. Today is September 26, 2023. I am your host, James Fauntleroy. Just to let you guys know, the Jaybefaunt channel is available on all major podcast platforms. So go ahead and subscribe to me there. Also part of the Revolutionary Blackout Network. So you guys can find me on Sundays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays. Just to let you guys know, if you guys would like to, you guys can go to my Substack at jaybefaunt.substack.com so you guys are made aware of whenever I upload clips, go live, or even put out any type of articles. If you guys would like to, you guys can go on my emailing list there as well so you're made aware of whenever I do go live. Now, just to let you guys know, I just want to say a big thank you to all of you that supported me when I did the mutual aid work over the weekend. I will get into that just a little bit to talk about. And also, I'm still waiting for my guest, Chairman Omali Yeshitela, to arrive. And so when he gets here, then we will start the discussion promptly, including or talking about our primary story for today. But for now, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be going to the chat to say hello to everybody that is joining, all the people that are pouring in to say hello. So we have Miguel H coming in saying peace. Good to see you in here, Miguel. Nice to have you as well. Now, what are we going to be talking about? So, Chairman, you're here. If you are ready, please give me a thumbs up. All right. Yes. Okay. We have here Chairman of African People's Socialist Party, Chairman Omali Yeshitela. Chairman, it is such an honor to have you with me here today. Thank you so very much for joining.
Thank you very much for having me, my dear comrade. I've been struggling with the internet, trying to get on, and I just got back to St. Louis off my northern tour. Just got in last night, and I want to make this work. Let's do it.
All right. And look, thank you so very much for your time as well. This definitely is a privilege. One of the things that I wanted to talk to you about was as far as a lot of people are now aware of what's going on with the African People's Socialist Party. There were some indictments that were made by the FBI as of last year, and they did a violent raid against you as well as other members of the leadership in the African People's Socialist Party. As far as what we can tell now, there is actually going to be some oral arguments that's going to be held on Thursday. If you can tell us just a little bit about that to keep us abreast of what's going on.
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you very much for giving this opportunity to have this discussion, because we think that the best part of our defense is for people to know what's happening, so that it's not just a matter of being persuaded by different articulations, especially as it's coming from the government and its mouthpieces. So just to tell the story, let everybody know what has happened, and it becomes clear to everybody in the world that all of these charges are contrived. And first, I want to say that the actual indictment did not occur initially. We went 9 months without indictment. We were so-called unindicted co-conspirators. We were supposedly have conspired with a Russian national living in Russia to do several things that led to me being designated more or less as a Russian agent. They have made charges on the Sedition Acts of 1917. It's associated with that. And this is the first time ever in the history. It's a seldom used law. And it's the first time in history that's been used simply dealing with issues of speech. And so for 9 months, while the world was aware of it, people saw it on newscasts. In fact, the FBI, when they came to our homes in pre-dawn on July 29th of last year, made it clear to me that this was going to be in the news. So the people knew who it was, but we had no legal standing because no charges had been filed. We had not been indicted. And so for 9 months, we were unable to go to a court and say, hey, this is bogus, make them prove it or anything like that. In April, we were charged. Initially, there were 4 of us, and now in April, 3 of us were charged and actually indicted. I went into court in Tampa, Florida, with Comrade Penny Hess on May 2nd. Comrade Jesse Neville went before federal court on May 8th. On that occasion, we went to court. I was put in handcuffs, leg shackles, photograph, let's say mugshot, fingerprints taken, and stuck in a cell where I was there for maybe 2 hours. And then I was brought before a judge, as was Penny Hess. I'm still in leg irons, hobbling, into a courtroom. Obviously, part of this is for the purpose of humiliating and demoralizing followers and people who are our supporters. And so this is typical to the historical treatment of African people. And it's part of it is obviously designed to keep us in our places and to let everybody else know we're being kept in our place. So on this occasion, we were charged. And I was placed under a $25,000 signature bond. And my passport was taken. It was made necessary for me to report every week on where I am and to get permission to leave St. Louis, Missouri. And so that's more or less the status. And then our lawyers file a response to this indictment and actually filed for dismissal of the charges, clearly declaring and demonstratively so that this was contrived, that this is an attack on free speech, etc. And then the prosecutor, the state, replied to our brief calling for dismissal to reinforce its position. And then our lawyer replied to that and called for oral arguments to be held. And the court granted oral arguments, which are to be held on the 28th of this month, just a couple of days from now. So that's the status of the case. We'll be going into Tampa, Florida, for the purpose of hearing oral arguments backing up the brief that was filed by our lawyer saying that these charges should be dismissed.
All right. Thank you so very much for keeping us up to date on that. To let you know, I actually live in Orlando, Florida, so I'm an hour and a half away from Tampa. And from what I've heard about this story, and I've actually had Miss Akile Anai on a couple of times, and she expressed the dire situation, because really, when you think about this in regards to people like Mumia Abu-Jamal, people like Julian Assange, this is really about our free speech as people, whether we are in journalism, whether we are activists within this country. I just did some mutual aid work over the weekend within downtown of Orlando with the chapter of the Revolutionary Blackout Network. So we're trying to be emulators of what you're doing with the African People's Socialist Party. And so this is dearly important. This is imperative for people like us to be aware of what's going on and how they are trying to stifle not just your voice, but the voice of those of us, especially those of us of African peoples throughout the diaspora, particularly here in the Imperial Core. So your bravery as well as your vigilance in this is duly noted, and it is appreciated. So I first of all want to make sure I say that to you, because you've been doing this for decades, and I am just a baby in this movement, and I'm trying to learn from you. And so I just want to express my appreciation and give you your flowers now. So thank you for letting us know about that. Just for everybody to know, and let me share my screen really quick. You guys need to be aware of what's going on. If you guys would like to be more further aware of what's going on, especially with the African People's Socialist Party, the Uhuru movement, you guys can go to handsoffuhuru.org. This will give you all the information you need to know upcoming about what is going on. And also, I will also put this in the chat as well. And so the Black is Back Coalition had a webinar a couple of weeks ago, which I was in attendance, and I was one of the people who actually asked the question about what's going on in Niger, Burkina Faso, as well as in Mali. And one of the things that I was asking, and I'm sure you probably remember, was the connection between Russia and China and how they are in assistance to a lot of these African nations by forgiving the debts and helping with the Belt and Road Initiative. And you gave a very nuanced answer in regards to how they are in league with these nations, because these nations aren't looking at it from an imperialistic perspective, but more of like a patron and a storefront type of relationship. It's more of a friendly trade. And so if you can expound on that as well, because I don't want people, especially a lot of Black people, to think that this is just imperialism by another face.
First of all, I think it's really important to make it this point that I did not join this movement to keep me from going to jail, or to free me, or to free the Uhuru Three. I joined and participated in this movement and helped to build organization because no one with any kind of integrity, dignity, who understands what's happening to us can find it tolerable. That we have nothing that we can do except to take this on. Secondly, I think it's important to say that over a period of years of struggle, we've come to the conclusion that the struggle of African people anywhere on the planet, whether that's Mali, whether it's Burkina Faso, whether that's St. Louis or Missouri, that's run into its limitations when fought within these borders that have been created by our oppressors for us.
Yeah.
And part of this conclusion has helped us to understand that from the perspective of the African People's Socialist Party, and we are African internationalists, we are a revolutionary organization that recognize that we don't believe in the concept of African peoples, that we are Africans, and that Africans have been forcibly dispersed against our will. And the thing is that when they forcibly dispersed us and imposed on us conditions and institutions that constructed false national consciousness, so that as opposed to being an African, I'm some kind of Afro-American, African-American. This is a new characterization in this country of who I am. Or as opposed to be an African, I am some kind of Afro-Swede, or I am some Afro-Colombian, or I'm even a Ghanaian, or etc. We have lost the African definition of who we are. And so we've become creatures that were constructed by the imperial powers themselves. Our land, our resources, our lives, our culture, our genius have stolen, colonized, so to speak. And that we live in a world today that has its origin in the assault on Africa. The entire construct of the political economy of the world revolves around a 600-year attack, that 600-year ago attack that Portugal made on Africa, and that initiated this process of stealing Black people, creating factories and plantations in the Madeiras off Africa's coast, transferring Africans against our will to other places around the world, and created a whole new economic process that dragged those people who were living in a particular terrain in area that we know as Europe today, dragged them into a united consciousness. Before slavery, before colonialism, there was no Europe, there was no white man. There were these different tribes, warring tribes, and confronting each other, the Celts and the various other different groups, and they were defining themselves primarily in relationship to each other. It was only the assault on Africa that initiated a process where all of them that's now engaged in looting, robbing not only African people, but dispersing us around the world, building economic processes throughout what is now known as the Americas, et cetera, where a world economy emerged. Was no world economy before then, which is not to say that people didn't trade with each other before then. Was no world economy. The thing that pulled the world economy together was the assault on Africa, and this what we characterize as a colonial mode of production. This is the basis of Europe escaping from this feudal mode of production and leaping forward. There is no other explanation. In fact, Karl Marx was looking for the explanation, and he was saying that in order for there to be capitalist production, there had to be a capitalist accumulation. In order for there to be a capitalist accumulation, there had to be a capitalist production. Therefore, it appears that we're trapped into this circular kind of process. But he said that in order to escape from this, then we have to presuppose the existence of an accumulation of capital that was not something that was a consequence of capitalist production, but a starting point. He said this starting point has the same significance in political economy as original sin in theology. And he said this starting point was turning Africa into a warren for the commercial hunting of black skins. It was the assault on India, where, as you know, some 50 million or so people died through England's involvement there, colonization there, and of course the colonization in these territories that we call the Americas, bringing gold and silver. This is what transformed the world. This is what created this process where what we knew as Celts and Normans and all these other groups now began to identify themselves collectively, and they became white. They became the white. Europe was born from that process because they identified themselves primarily in relationship to us. When I say us, I'm talking about African people. I'm talking about those people who indigenous to this land that we call the United States and within the Western Hemisphere, and India and the rest of the world. So the whole thing rests upon that construct. So now what we see is, unfortunately, too many of us are trying to fight out of this thing, recognizing ourselves based on the definitions that we have been given. So I'm supposed to somehow be some kind of Black American fighting for what? Fighting for something. And then there's supposed to be Africans in Colombia, Afro-Colombians, and all of this. And the fact is that we constitute something like at least 1.5 billion people who are struggling to organize. But part of the contradiction, of course, is a matter of identification and destruction of this false national consciousness in the process of creating a revolutionary national consciousness, a proletarian consciousness that represents the reality of who we are as a people and our role in the world. So now we see as recently as 1940s, 75 years ago, the development of what has been characterized as the Atlanticist group. And this Atlanticist group was something that was formed subsequent to the Second World Imperialist War to redivide the world among all these predators, etc. And there was a genuine desire for peace, similar to what happened in 1919 with the League of Nations, its predecessor, that was initiated by Woodrow Wilson, but couldn't make it because the U.S. Congress wouldn't support it at that time. So you have this real genuine interest in peace. But what they meant by peace was creating a situation where Europeans wouldn't have to fight each other over colonial territory. So you wouldn't have to have the kind of wars that we've seen to redivide the world. These are like gangsters, and they don't like the deal they got the last time, so they break it and they create these treaties. And so we had like the North Atlantic Treaty Organization that was born from this process, NATO, if you will. We have the emergence of the United Nations. We have the emergence of the World Trade Organization. We have the emergence of things like the International Monetary Fund. And all of these entities come as this is the arrangement. So there's still contention between the various colonial powers, but it's a moderated contention. It is an attempt to be able to struggle over territories and resources without having to kill each other for it. And so this is what emerged. At the same time, you had a Russia that was not a part of this process that led to the emergence of capitalism from colonialism to capitalism. In fact, Russia was distinguished in part because subsequent to the First Imperialist World War, unlike the other European countries and so-called communists, the Russians had said that they would not, that they said that none of the communists, none of the socialists would participate in this world war that they could see happening. They said our objective has to be to turn the imperialist war into civil war. And we have to refuse to support the different countries that we are located in to make this war to redivide the world. And so that was their position. But the other countries did unite to participate in this war. All the communists in these other countries unite. Russia didn't unite. And the war, as I mentioned, was a war to redivide the world. If you think about it, in 1919, what we saw was that in 1918, in fact, the year right following the success of the Russian Revolution, the Bolshevik Revolution, Russia was attacked by every colonial power, a major colonial power, including the United States and Japan. They all invaded Russia. So this is when this whole thing started. And the thing that gave impetus to the Russian Revolution was the struggle of others of us were making around the world. You got to remember, this is high tide. You see the emergence of the Garvey movement, where Africans all around the world are engaged in trying to break free from this colonial domination and characterizing our struggle as revolving around recognition of Africa for Africans at home and abroad. That's not just an empty slogan. That is, who is going to control this territory? Who, because this was debated at the United Nations. Who was going to get Southwest Africa? What colonial powers were going to do this? And so Garvey's Africa for Africans at home and abroad, and up to 11 million African people around the world connected to this trajectory. You saw at the same time, you're talking about a period of the Red Summer that happened in this country. You're talking about the bombing of in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Colonialism, colonial peoples fighting everywhere. And this is the context within which Russia emerged and independent of its consciousness necessarily emerged as a part of the anti-colonial struggle that was challenging the status quo. And so now they succeeded. They've been making war against Russia for more than 100 years. Of course, China had to break out of this semi-colonial relationship that it enjoyed with the rest of the world. It had a magnificent Chinese revolution that had all kinds of ideological impact on non-white peoples around the world and some white people. And then, of course, the Russian Revolution, a whole new framework of things. And then they succeeded in encircling Russia, crushing making it possible for Russia to participate in the world economy, starving Russia out, creating this war in Afghanistan, so that Russia would have to fight its own Vietnam War. That was the conscious determination that had been made by Brzezinski, James Earl Carter's national security advisor, that to create a Vietnam War for Russia, starve it, etc. And eventually, of course, that contributed to the implosion of the communist project, the socialist project in Russia. And so now, of course, against all the odds. Russia has reemerged as a powerful force, not as a communist force. So that's not even the fundamental thing here. China has reemerged, has emerged full-fledged. It never was a neocolonial situation. It came into the world, the China that we see now, as a part of a revolutionary project. So the Chinese people had control, even though there were still class differences within that revolutionary project. And now China and Russia are seeking their own interest, their own place in the world. And Africa, unfortunately, is this force that's here, but divided, or not necessarily divided, but certainly separated from what our own consciousness, our own interests, more or less. If you look at what's happening in the world, you see for the first time in history, they make an African man a general, a former general, head of the Department of Defense of the United States. For the first time in the 240 some odd year history of the Marine Corps, they give an African a 4th star, a general, make him a 4-star general and put him over AFRICOM to control Africa and all the forces within Africa who might be contending with U.S. Interests in that on our continent. And then for the first time in U.S. history, they make an African general from the Air Force, put him over the Joint Chiefs of Staff. The entire military apparatus of the United States, of the great imperial power, has a black face, has the face of the colonized people. And that says something about the intent of the United States government as it relates to Africa. And the fact is that the fundamental question continues to be now, the colonial question. There's a colonial mode of production. We're not just talking about a policy of colonialism that we have seen from time to time, and some countries have had policies of colonialism, but the overwhelming mode of production revolves around this parasitic colonial thing. So when we look at China and we look at Russia, we just have to hope that they're going to do the right things. And the 1960s, we knew they were going to do the right things because they were part of a real revolutionary movement, a real worldwide revolutionary movement. China was involved in an assumption that the world was going to be a communist world, that the workers and colonized people of the world would take power. Same thing, Lenin and the Russians, communists at that time, made the assumption the workers of the world would take the world. Now, what we see is a situation where there's more or less a kind of concession to the imperial order, that there's an assumption that this world order will continue, and countries are trying to maneuver within it to try and get the best situation for themselves and for their people. Africa, I think one of the reasons we were attacked is because the African People's Socialist Party has been working to build revolutionary organizations throughout the continent of Africa, everywhere Black people are. We are in the Caribbean. We are in Africa. We're in South Africa. We're in Namibia. We're in various other places in Africa. And we have revolutionary party organizations throughout Europe and the Caribbean. That's who we are. And I think that's one of the things that makes us a problem, because the Africa thing is the critical, unspoken. Nobody even talks about Africa. When they're talking about what they're going to do, they just intend to be able to continue to loot Africa, and they make the assumption that Africa has no agency. And the African People's Socialist Party says we do have agency. And that is what we are about, and that's why I think we have been attacked. And so as it relates to Russia and China, they will do like countries do, who are not motivated by the same kind of revolutionary principles and revolutionary philosophical and ideological assumptions that the Chinese had under Mao Zedong, that the Russians had under Lenin, and perhaps even subsequent to that. That's not the motivation anymore in terms of building this whole. They talk things like multipolar world, but to have a whole bunch of forces around the world who are part of the same colonial project is not necessarily to our advantage. We say it's strategically in our interest because it's breaking up the status quo. That means it gives us room as Africans to be able to chart and move on our own course. But the future of Africa is up to us, not to China, not to Russia. Anything is up to us. What are we going to do to make that revolutionary project that will liberate Africa and the future of African people? Uhuru. I know that was a long-winded response, but I hope it was helpful. Uhuru.
So, one of the things about long-winded responses is that they are nuanced, which is something that we all need now. So I am happy that you were able to give a more detailed response. So thank you very much for that. One of the things that I wanted to also bring up was that basically over the last couple of days, Niger had a response to France. They said, you ain't got to go home, but you got to get the hell out of here. And so what's happened recently is that France is now withdrawing, and Macron has now has to mope around Paris with his proverbial tail between his legs. And so there's actually an article right out of Al Jazeera that recently came out on Sunday, which was actually detailing what was happening within Niger and what has subsequently happened. And I have covered what's going on in Niger over the last few weeks. And so I see this as a positive direction. Al Jazeera says France to withdraw ambassador troops from Niger after coup. And so this is actually from French President Emmanuel Macron. He says that his country will withdraw its ambassador and troops from Niger in the wake of the July coup that overthrew democratically elected President Mohamed Bazoum. He said France has decided to withdraw its ambassador in the next hours. Our ambassador diplomats will return to France. So he added that military cooperation was over and that 1,500 French troops stationed in the country would withdraw in the months and weeks to come, with a full pullout by the end of the year. So I would just like to get your reaction to this latest developments that's happening in Niger.
I think it's extremely important what's happening in Niger, because part of what we're just seeing, like some of the surface things in terms of France, having to move, but there's a lot of activity on the ground in Niger. I think you inferred that as a lead-in to this particular discussion. We are talking with some of the comrades on the ground in Niger, and as well as comrades. One of the remarks they were making, because as you know, a Nigerian president is the formal head of the ECOWAS, and they threatened military this and military that. And what happened was that there are Africans in Nigeria who said that no troops are going to come through a particular area of the territory they're not going to let them come through to attack Niger. And inside Nigeria, too, there's a great struggle around this question. And even the president of Nigeria has questionable legitimacy as far as the people in Nigeria are concerned themselves. And this whole notion that they're trying to bandy about in terms of the overthrow of democratic elected person or democracy. I mean, colonialism is the most anti-democratic thing that you can see. And French colonialism, somehow, what happened, of course, Bazoum, when they overthrew Bazoum, they overthrew France. That's what I think we have to understand, that colonialism is a absolutely, totally undemocratic institution that's been imposed on our people. So I think it's really important, and I think it gives us room, and we can see space that's happening. There's a lot of discussion and mobilization in Niger. Beyond simply only the military forces, etc. So there's a space to advance a deeper revolutionary process there, because even as we talk about France getting out, and we've seen in some places, I don't remember if Niger was characterized much by the destruction of French flags and then the carrying of the Russian flag. Or certainly we saw that in Mali and places like that. But Russia's not going to free us. I didn't see the red, black, and green flying anywhere. And the thing is that for us to be free, we're going to have to become conscious of our interests as African people. Borders got to come down so that we become less vulnerable. All these borders facilitate the extraction of value from Africa and divisions among us. So that's really important. But yes, we think that what's happened in Niger is important. What happened in Mali is important. It's breaking up the entire construct. The colonial construct is under serious assault here. and not just there, but it's also true in the United States. I mean, the entire colonialism as a mode of production is under severe stress. I mean, it was white people who attacked the Capitol on January 6th, who defecated on the desk of or in the halls of this hallowed place and chased the vice president of the United States throughout the Capitol, threatening to hang him. That wasn't the African People's Social Party, wasn't the Uhuru movement. It's the statement of just the depth of the crisis that has now enveloped the entire colonial mode of production, and there is no way out of this for them. What we have to do again is to become more conscious of what our own interests are and fight to achieve our interests, to identify and achieve our interests. So yeah, we feel really good about what we've seen up to now, but the real deal is going to be the power of the people, and we're going to have to discuss this issue. We don't even hear people talking about power, revolutionary, the workers, the African workers, or any workers for that matter. That discussion hasn't been on the table for a long time, and I think that's something that's reemerging today. When we look at Niger, we look at Mali, we look at various other places where we are located. Did you see, for example, the president of Colombia did this interview, I think, on Democracy Now! And he's talking about how people are rejecting this definition of reality and democracy that's been imposed on them at gunpoint by the colonizers. And this is something that's happening globally. That the fact of the matter is the genie is out of the bottle, and they're not going to be able to put it back in.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at it right now, I just looking at just the rhetoric that's coming out. This is actually out of ABC News. They were actually doing a report. It says Niger's junta said in a response that the announcement signals a new step towards the sovereignty of the country. Quote, imperialist and neocolonialist forces are no longer welcome in our national territory. The new era of cooperation based on mutual respect and sovereignty is already underway. And so, as you can see right now, there is really just a resistance against capitalism, colonialism, imperialism that you can see on a more micro scale here in the United States, in the Imperial Core, where you have a lot of workers that are rising up against really totalitarian rule within the workplace. But then you can see it on a macro scale, how you have not only these African countries that are saying absolutely not to this imperial rule, but they're even looking at different blocks to join in order to say no, in regards to, like, for instance, the expansion of BRICS when it went from 5 countries to now 11 countries. And that's just the first phase. And now they're trying to do even a second phase, which will include even more African countries within the second phase. And so I think they just put in Ethiopia and the first phase. And so that's the Horn of Africa, which has a lot of resources, especially in minerals as well as oil. And so we're seeing that they are really waking up. And this is something that I think that is deeply important for especially those of us Black people to really pay keen attention to.
I think that's right. And I think also, we recognize this strategic significance of what we're seeing. And we also recognize certain limitations because, the India, as which is one of the BRICS, the acronym stems in part from India's involvement, but it also blocked Algeria for coming into the BRICS. It blocked Algeria from coming in. So there are contradictions there. But in general, I agree with you. And even if you look at South Africa, you talk about South Africa and the oppression of African people in South Africa, the destitution of people that's enforced by the African National Congress and always was there enforced by them, killing miners, if you remember, doing just a strike on our own land and just wanted better wages for extracting our gold and stuff like that was going to be sent to colonial countries. So we recognize this as a really important strategic development that we're seeing in terms of this assault that's being made against the colonial mode of production, but we also recognize our responsibility to take it beyond this. We have to take it beyond this. The people have to have power. People have to have power in Mali and Niger and other places. The people have to have power in South Africa, have to have, revolutionary organization, revolutionary movement guided by scientific revolutionary theory, and which is the kind of work that we try to do and that we try to impart, like on Struggles Everywhere. But generally speaking, we agree with you 100% that this is these are really important developments, traumatic developments. We believe existential developments as far as the existing social system is concerned. The existing world order has definitely run into a major contradiction. We say that we have encountered like an uneasy equilibrium. And in fact, it's one that sees history now moving toward concretely toward the future, as opposed to the attempt by those who would maintain this colonial equilibrium by having people trapped in this parasitic relationship with capitalism, colonial capitalism.
Mm-hmm. Sure. There was a recent reading that I was doing because I'm, finishing up my reading of Assata Shakur's autobiography.
Right.
And one of the things that she actually talked about was that as far as revolution is concerned, it can't just be an emotional, just go guns blazing when it comes to fighting against imperialism, colonialism. It has to be a scientific process, which we have to look at the projects of like the Bolshevik Revolution, the Chinese Revolution, looking at the Cuban Revolution, things like that, and what they did and how they actually got the people to be on board, because it realized that they had to liberate themselves, and by means of their own understanding of their power, then that's how they can be on board for revolutions and liberation. And so you basically just reflected to me what Comrade Assata Shakur was basically saying. And so I think this is really important for a lot of us to take to heart, is that we will not be free until we get ourselves to a point where we see that, number one, our liberation is imperative for the world because it's used as a division tactic. The anti-blackness that we see within this country is used as a division tactic to keep a working class divided. And then on top of it, because we are constantly being divided, then we are seen as second-class citizens, when in reality, if we were to push for our liberation, it would be a domino effect to liberations of many other peoples, even within this imperial core. Do you agree or disagree?
Well, I think I agree with the basic principles that you're talking about. I think one of the reasons that this government attacked us, and because I think that we are an essential part of a revolutionary project that deconstructs the whole colonial capitalist social system as it articulates itself and represents itself here in the core, as you characterize it in various other places in Africa. I think that one of the things that the intentions of this attack on us was to push us into a precipitous kind of action, to push us into a situation that we could not sustain, to push us either underground, make us run, or make us get involved in actions that that would lead to our destruction of this movement, this overall movement. And what has to happen, of course, is that we have to understand what it took to put this thing together. Where does it come from? Did Jesus or Allah or somebody just give all this power and resources to them? You made the statement, you said that something to the effect that that capitalism divides us, etc. But the capitalism itself has its origin in colonialism. Mm-hmm. And when you talk about things like because effectively what we are talking about when we talk about racism and things like that, part of what we are talking about is the superstructure, ideas, institutions, and things like that, born of an economic base. The economic base, we say, is colonialism. Everywhere it's colonialism. And then the ideas that get promoted, the ideas that grow from that are groomed and developed from that are people of what people might call racism. It's the philosophy, the ideology that we have, that we see and are influenced by, that turns an ordinary white worker who should be just a white worker, who should be on the side of the oppressed all around the world. But this person now is more influenced in terms of ideology and philosophy, not even by his own long-term interests, but is more influenced by the ideas that stem from this colonial economic base. This is where the ideas come from. The legal system come from. The culture is influenced by this relationship. So you don't even have to get a group of white people together and teach them to be racist or to hate black people and things like that. It's a natural consequence of the relationship that based on the oppression, exploitation of all this value. Look at what we've seen around the world. Where have revolutions happened? Where have they happened? Where have they tried to happen? The most significant way. It's in all of the colonized situation, whether it's in Detroit, Vietnam, all these other places, Cuba. It's under the colonial, where people are colonized. This is where the class contradiction is. We say the class contradiction is consolidated, is located within the colonial contradiction. That's where the locus of the class contradiction in the world is the colonial question. And I'm not one of those, by the way. I'm not some anti-communist. I'm saying that you can't get to communist. The road to socialism is painted black. That's effectively what we're saying, that if you're really interested in transforming this world, you cannot do it without recognizing centrality. Could there be a capitalism without the genocide committed on the indigenous people in this country? If the indigenous people would be able to realize their aims, and most of the oppression and exploitation of the indigenous people revolves around the fact that their land has been absolutely taken away from them. All the resources from this land. Where's the capitalism going to come from if you don't have this land? If there weren't concentration camps that they call Indian reservations, where's the capitalism going to come from if you don't have African people who will push all around the world, developing value, not for us, but the value for this system? And where do the ideas come from that influence ordinary white people who ought to be on the right side of history to push them on the wrong side of history? Because the fact is that their 401ks and their ability to get this and that cheap gasoline, cheap labor and what have you is the result of this colonial construct. And this is a colonial mode of production. That's the argument that we are making. And that this is the blind side of those people who claim that they're looking to find communism, but would challenge the Black Revolution, the Mexican Revolution, the struggle of Puerto Rico, that we said, because somehow we're dividing the working class. Hell, we're not dividing the working class. They're struggling in our own interests, and we recognize that our interests are inseparable from the interests of the working peoples of the world. But you can't get to that communism you want without traveling this black highway. The road to socialism is painted black. And that's the basic point that we would make. I hope that wasn't too complicated.
No. Just the thing is that my brain is a little bit simpler than what I would like for it to be. But at the same time, I'm picking up what you're throwing down, which I really appreciate. And this goes into the whole notion that those of us who are Black can't take the notion of race and class actually being intertwined, when in reality, it is the colonial construct that actually put race and class together.
You've got it. This is the question that seemed to have stymied, revolution in 1960, the relationship between race and class, colonialism. That's the relationship. And it's a colonial construct. I mean, even when Marx was writing Capital, where did he get the money from? He was starving. He was poor. He was not the working class, but he was badly off. Where did he get the money from? He got the money from Engels, who got the money from his father, who was a capitalist, who also was making much of his money from slavery that was in the Caribbean in terms of textile and stuff like that. That's where Marx got his money from. So it's these Africans who he could not see, who were picking cotton and what have you, that made it possible for him to visit the London Museum on a regular basis, to go to these magnificent libraries and do all of this work, do all of this study. It was the Africans who were able to do it, Africans who were enslaved. The political economy rests upon this foundation that Marx himself was kind of able to say has the same relationship to political economy as original sin in theology. So Africans have agency, and we have to assume responsibility. This charge that somehow I'm a Russian agent is a denial of the fact that we have agency, we have consciousness, we know what's happening to us, we know that we have to be free. Don't take a Russian, don't take Joe Biden or Vladimir Putin to tell us that we are oppressed and that we have to be free. We have agency. We can find our own way, and this plays into this whole concept that governs much of the world. And the assumption is that people will really believe in this stuff because Black people don't have enough sense to know that we have a future that we should be able to carve for ourselves. So the Russians, the big bad Russians, told the innocent, naive Black people to do this criminal kind of stuff, that, et cetera, that's against the interests of the good America, this democratic America. No. We have agency.
Yeah,
and that's what we're claiming.
The Russians didn't place drugs in our community like the CIA did. It wasn't the Russians that came in that gave us austerity, and it's not the Russians that are making it so that me as a disabled person doesn't have enough to survive on from disability benefits. It's not them. In fact, if anything, I saw the truth for what it was and became a communist because of the capitalist system, and I saw how bad it was and how bad it is. So that's basically what it is. And
we don't have Russian last names, do we?
Oh. No.
Yeah, we don't have Russian last names.
No.
And as Muhammad Ali said a long time ago about the Vietnamese, ain't no Russian ever call us nigga. That's not our legacy. Our relationship to this system we are informed by our relationship to this system and not by Russians. This is what informs us. This is what drives us to say that there has to be a different kind of social system. This is what makes us communists and socialists and revolutionaries and what have you. Not some damn Russian any more than some letter from, I've forgotten what it's called now, from some slave master turned us into disliking each other, and that whatever it's called, I've forgotten it now. Such a silly thing that so many Africans were connected to this, that we've been tricked, the dark skins against the light skins, and all of this kind of silliness. That's the petty bourgeoisie that does. If that were the case, if it were that simple, you wouldn't have had a knee on the neck of George Floyd. They wouldn't have to have the police in our communities in every instance. They wouldn't have to have National Guards and all those folk killing us. Ain't no advice given by some slave master to trick us. Never been the case. It's the military, it's the arms, it's the state, the colonial state that's done that to us. Anyway, but yeah, all right, comrade.
Yo, this has been a fantastic conversation. I just want to do just a little bit more of a point before I let you go, if that's okay with you.
Sure.
Okay. So there was a point that I wanted to also bring out, and a lot of people, this goes in line with what I wanted to talk about too. There's a paragraph here that I wanted to give a direction to the audience. It says Andrew Leibovich, a research fellow at the Clendendale Institute, the think tank, said the decision marks both an acceptance of a harsh reality for France and the region, and may possibly put some limits on the U.S. deployments in Niger, though, as we have seen, U.S. and France have not followed exactly the same positionings in Niger. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about, it's that my point is, it's interesting how the U.S. is thinking about putting boots on the ground in Niger. This seems to be more than just a French problem, but a Western problem. They need Niger as well as the other Sahel states to be subjugated because those resources are that important. So basically, ultimately, when people think what's going on in these African nations, it's not just, oh, they're just racist. It's really because they want a subjugation because of the resources, because a lot of these European and Western nations really don't have the resources in order to be able to operate the way they do. So they literally have to go into Africa to steal the resources from the people in order to be able to have the power that they have. One of the things I try to tell people is Europe would be nothing without Africa. Europe would be just this desolate place with very little resources. But in order for them to be able to have the socially democratic wins that they've had over the last few decades, they've literally had to steal from the Africans in order to be able to have the universal health care and all these beautiful socially democratic policies that they enjoy. And people will say, oh, we need to go by the Nordic model, but the Nordic model actually means robbing Africans in order to be able to have something better for yourself in these countries. So is it really ethical for us to want to follow the Nordic model when in reality the Nordic model really is just a model of theft?
Well, Carmen Fauntleroy, you've actually brought us back to this whole question about the workers of the world and racism and all this stuff, because the truth of the matter is that Africans built the Eiffel Tower. Just the money that came from Haiti is what built the Eiffel Tower, and that's Haiti alone. The sidewalk cafes in Paris, etc., they come from extracting value from Africa. The fact is that the so-called the colonial tax that's imposed on something like 54 African entities that they call countries, that brings in billions of dollars annually, that the countries and heads of state themselves don't even see. They don't even know how much is extracted there. And when they ask the questions, they get overthrown, like Gbagbo in Ivory Coast, overthrown by France. And then the thing is that you have a situation where you ask the question about. You say that Europe will be nothing without Africa, but the point is that there would be no U.S. without Africa. The point that I'm trying to make all along is that the foundation of this whole social system has its origin, and that developed exponentially in colonial slavery and the attack on Africa. And this is the critical question that Africans have to really be able to grapple with. And this is not something that tries to stop you from being a communist or anything like that, but we have to really recognize the origin of this whole thing, and we won't get out of it. And like you said, that why is it that France noted to be this great anti-fascist thing? It fought against the Nazis in the Second Imperialist World War, but at the same time they were bragging about fighting against Nazis, and they do that today. They were dominating people in Vietnam. They were dominating and murdering people in Africa, Algeria, all of this. So the colonial question is the real question. When you look at things like fascism versus democracy as they define it, you're looking at forms of the state. It's the colonial state that we are talking about. The foundation of it all has been colonialism, and Africa has been central to its emergence. I just saw maybe a couple of weeks ago, CARICOM just released a report dealing with this whole question of reparations that says that if you just look at the Caribbean alone, CARICOM, the Caribbean community. They said if you just look at the Caribbean alone and talk about reparations, and they calculated it in a very scientific way, that that $131 trillion. That's greater than the total gross domestic product of the world. In other words, that they owe us more than there is money in the world to pay. And this is coming from CARICOM. You can get that, by the way. You can Google it and get this because it's really important kind of study. We understate our significance over and over again because the scientists and the smart ones and the geniuses have told us. And so you have one hand, you have the reactionaries, and the other hand, you have the progressives and the revolutionaries, but they all understate who we are, our significance, and the centrality. They would liquidate the centrality of Africa and colonized people because they would place the centrality in the so-called working class. But this is industrial working class they're talking about. They say the main contradiction at the point of production. We say the main contradiction at the point of the bayonet. It's the bayonet. It's colonialism that's extracting all this value so that people extracting a value of bauxite from places like Guyana and places in Africa, etc. Bauxite that goes into making cars. And so the worker who's in Detroit or the worker who's in France or someplace else making cars and stuff using those resources. The workers who working in these plants that are making computers, etc., exploited at the point of production. Well, where the hell does the bauxite come from? Where the hell does the resource, the chromium and everything necessary for the computers come from? That's the core question that gets overlooked. It didn't start in Detroit or France or something like that. It started among the colonized people and the land that we stand on, you and I right now. Nobody even talks about the indigenous people. They don't even get a discussion unless they're in the room. The reality is this is the colonial construct that everything rests on that. And this must be, we must force that. We must force that recognition upon especially those people the white people who love us. We have to force this recognition upon them because you are not going to get no communism, no socialism, all this stuff that you're looking for without dealing first with the colonial contradiction upon which everything rests. So I think it's important to say that. And in terms of looking at France in Niger and other places, at the same time they're talking about France. The United States has a minimum of 1,200 troops, and I say there's much more than that in Niger. And if you look at in this largest drone base in the world in Niger, and if you look at some of the videos of the American troops in Niger, who do you see? You see black people who are soldiers for America in Niger. And this is a profound contradiction. You can't get to that contradiction unless you understand the colonial contradiction, because Africans will be in when the French made war. Tried to control the people in Vietnam. 71% of the people fighting to maintain Vietnamese colonialism were colonized people ourselves from Algeria, from Africa, and other places who the French had colonized. When the United States took up the mantle after France was crushed in Dien Bien Phu in 1954, the United States took it over. And then the majority of the Africans, the people on the front line, from 50 to 64%. Of American troops on the front line were Africans from this country.
Yeah.
So this is a critical question. They can't run nothing without us. And we have to be able to take ourselves seriously and recognize centrality. And this is hard for African people to do. It's hard for us to recognize. In fact, if I'm saying this, I must be lying because I didn't read that in no book, right? Because I'm saying what I know to be the case because I used to say it myself. You know, I really don't take that too seriously, etc. But that's the truth. And this is the truth that we have to advance among our own people to recognize our centrality, not only right now, but in the development of civilization itself. I mean, the barbarians have taken control of the goddamn world. Anyway, comrade, so I think that I think it's really important, the developments that we see happening in Africa, but not just in Africa. You know, I was mentioning the statement that's coming from the president of Colombia and other peoples everywhere. They're waking up and they're finding this this arrangement to be intolerant. And that's a great trajectory strategically in terms of the movement. But we have to take responsibility for our own liberation. We can't be satisfied with the existence of a BRIC or how China is moving this way and Russia's moving that way. Their movement does not guarantee our liberation. What guarantees our freedom and our future is us, is we do that. And that's the thing that I'm saying. And that's something sometimes Africans have a difficult time grappling with, but it's the truth. But that's what we're building on. That's how we work. We are organizing to govern. That's what our objective is, to govern, to be a self-governing, self-determining people, and to disallow any other force in the world from doing that. Not only that, but governing under the leadership of the African working class that now has its own organization, its own revolutionary party, guided by revolutionary theory of African internationalism. That's what we see is the way forward.
Woo! Thank you so much for all that, Chairman Omali Yeshitela. Man, you know what? And that's some good words for me to reflect more on, especially because it's just like the old saying goes, we save us. And I think that means that a lot of us are people like myself have to reflect more as an African, as how we can push for our liberation as a people. Because I mean, honestly, you know the phrase they say, nobody's free until we're all free. If we make sure to free ourselves, it's really a domino effect, because other people can free themselves as well too.
Well, I want to say that Africa is central to the whole question. That's why we have an African Socialist International. That's why we have one organization that stretches around the globe and what have you. We're small. We're, basically insignificant in terms of numbers. But what we represent is the potent thing that makes the United States government attack us. Not because they think we're working for Russians, but because they know we are working for Africa and Africans. And we're doing this in concert with all the other oppressed people and with the working people of the world. And we just know that the way to the liberation of all the workers, the emancipation of the working class internationally, that road leads to Africa. And that's the thing that we, concentrate on. And we do practical work. We're not just dreamers and stuff like that. Our activity is designed to negate colonialism, and which is the foreign and alien domination of any people, take over our economic, our political life and stuff like that. We've got more than 50 economic institutions in various places. Much of that's concentrated in St. Louis, where they attack radio station, furniture stores, markets that bring African people together to circulate capital within our communities, freeing up the brains of people so that young African people walking down the street that's been decimated by the various impact of colonialism, pushing us out of our community. They can see something now that represents a future that they can aspire to. So we see children in North St. Louis, they're playing basketball in the street, using bicycle rims for hoops. We organized and got we raised $150,000 and we got the land and then put $150,000 basketball court, state-of-the-art basketball court in one of the most oppressed sectors of the community. And the money came from reparations. White people who voluntarily said, we want to pay reparations to Black people. We want to take responsibility for the crimes that we have taken as a people. We have in the United States, white people who are working in something like 140 different cities for reparations to African people, and also to we call it behind enemy lines, talking about the genocide being committed against Black people. Some people don't even know why the reparations workers issue is reverberating the way it is. Part of it because of that work. We conducted the first World Tribunal on Reparations in history. Never was a reparations tribunal. We did that in 1982. We created an organization for the first time, a mass organization around reparations. Never such an organization ever existed before. We had tribunals for something like 12 years. Leonard Jeffries was one of the persons who presented it. Tupac Shakur's mama presented a finished Shakur. Tupac was in the audience when that happened, etc. So this is the work that we've been doing. We are not just spectators who are flapping our gums talking about stuff. We're actually constructing the future, even as we are trying to disengage from this horrendous colonial past and present that we are dealing with. So I just wanted to say those things. That's who we are. And our objective is to govern. We're not in it just to be talking and to get more likes than anybody else and more views. And we're not the social media militants. You know, we're people who are actually engaged in trying to transform this world that we live in. Marx said it correct. In past, he said philosophers have only interpreted the world in certain ways. The point is to change it. And that's what we're involved in doing. All right. So thank you very, very, very much, Brother Fauntleroy. By the way, I want to ask you, are you related to the Fauntleroys out of D.C.?
Maybe. I don't know. Look, it's,
no, these are
masters and all that. So.
Okay. Yeah, they ended up in the Congress and other kind of political thing. I was just wondering. I knew some of them. That's all. Uhuru.
Oh, thank you so very much.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm trying to find them. So hopefully, you know,
Google it. Google it.
Yeah, I'll make sure to do that too.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah. Thank you so very much, Chairman Omali Yeshitela.
November 4th, we're having an anti-colonial free speech mobilization in Washington, D.C. All out to Washington, D.C. Get on the bus. November 4th. Go to handsoffuhuru.org, and I'll see you there. Hope to see you there too, comrade. Uhuru.
Thank you so very much. Uhuru. Take care. Bye-bye. All right. So, and I'm so glad I had him on to have that conversation. Oh, man. Yes. They also will be having a march on Washington, basically. This is going to be a great one on November 4th. So please make sure to go to handsoffuhuru.org so that you guys are aware of that. I put it in the description as well, because y'all, this is very important as well. So that is amazing. If you guys have not already, please make sure to give me a like. That pushes me out into the algorithm. And thank you so very much to everybody who has been in the stream so far. If you guys have not already, you guys can go to my Substack at jaybefaunt.substack.com so that you guys are aware of whenever I go live, upload clips, or write articles, so you guys can go there as well. Please make sure again to like the stream. Yes. And if you guys have not, I just want to also give a shout out to the patrons on Patreon and Coffee. Thank you so very much to all of you, because without you guys, I would not be able to do this work. But because you all help me out in this work, I am able to do this. So thank you so very much for that. And just to let you guys know, I also have tiers as well on my Patreon. You have JB members, Solidarity, Comrade, Jaybefaunters, Super Jaybefaunters, Super Duper Jaybefaunters, and Mega Jaybefaunters. So thank you so very much, just so you guys are aware of that, as well as if you guys would like to give tips on PayPal or anything else, thank you so, or if you guys would like to give super chats, much appreciated. And also thank you to all the members who are members of the channel too. I'm going to be going to the chat so that we can have a conversation. So Nick Cruz is in the chat. Comrade Nick, thank you so very much. Good to see you in the chat. Sabby Stabs is in here saying preach. Thank you so very much. Interesting question by Colin. Colin says, JB, can you try to get Silver Spook and Red Nation on? Africa Stream has good stuff as well. I can reach out. Let me see. I'll keep that started so I can look them up. But yeah, I'm definitely willing. Red Nation is, are they Silver Spook and Red Nation, are they indigenous? Please let me know, because I also want to have some indigenous people on to talk about them as well. So I just have that. So let's go back to the rest of the chat. Whoever says a lot of people need to learn that the power that they have and be willing to use it. I think that's one of the reasons why people like me have channels like this. It's not necessarily to just report on the news, but it's also to continuously be a reminder that you have more power than you realize. A lot of times what people will think is that their power lies in just their vote, when in reality, your vote is a very small, tiny piece of power that honestly they really don't want you to have, and they take away in many instances. The power that you really have is in your actions with organizing people, especially fellow workers. So, yeah. Let's continue. Colin says, I welcome BRICS challenging the U.S. It is based on industrialism, which is not liberatory. We cannot be free through production. I think that, yeah, that's part of what the chairman was saying. Let me see here. And thank you so much to everybody for commenting throughout this. This has to be a great conversation. Let me see. Creative experiments. This is actually a good one. It says magical accumulation that comes from thin air is a myth. Absolutely. You got to think about, like, where does the silicone come from? Where does the platinum come from? Where does the rubber come from? Right? What are these things? Where does the gold come from? It always has a source. You have to look at that as well. The raw materials, where they come from. Pittsburgh Dude 87 says, JB, why no Rumble stream? It's streaming. Yeah, I'm streaming on Rumble. You might want to just take a look again, but I should be. If not, well, sorry. Rumble's giving me problems. Creative Experiment says the West wants to steal African gold. Look, I'm gonna tell you right now. Also, another resource in Africa that people don't talk about is Africans. We, meaning people like myself, are the results of these resources being stolen and brought here. So the people are also a resource. And we're holdovers, or we're continuous resources that are being used in the imperial core as a people in order to produce for these corporations. So yeah, you're also a resource. So they steal us and they continuously have us born over and over. Like, they actually had breeding in slavery times, where they forced African slaves to breed. So yeah, that happened here. All right, so Colin says, I should say yes, Silver Spook and Red Nation are indigenous. African Stream are African-based anti-imperialists. Oh, okay. All right. I'll make sure to look them up. Thank you so very much, Colin. Appreciate it very much. Going to check the rock. All right. We're good on the rock. Now, what are we talking about today? Well, we were talking about Buh-Bye France. We just talked about that with Chairman Omali Yeshitela. That was an amazing conversation. We're going to also be talking about a couple of other stories as well. We are going to be talking about priced out. And then, why do I have a vulture with real estate investors? We're going to be talking about that. It's going down in Mali. So I'm sorry, in Lahaina in Maui. Sorry. That's what I meant to say. So we're going to be talking about that. And then we're going to be talking about his future threatened. So that is also another story that is making the rounds that I also wanted to discuss. So that's what we're going to be starting off with right now. So teen's future threatened over his hair. So if anybody knows anything about being a Black person, or as the chairman was saying, an African, is that our hair has been a controversy since forever. It has been a issue that we have had to endure for a long time, where we are constantly being looked down upon. So a Black student was suspended for his hair at the Barbers High School in Mont Belvieu, Texas. So I actually want to start off with the article that actually talks about what happened in Bellevue, Texas, so you guys are aware of this happening. And to many of us Black people, particularly a lot of Black women, are also very aware of the situation because it happens to them a lot. I think Sabby's in the chat. She can definitely attest to this. But you're going to see how this ties in to class. But this article says a Black student was suspended for his hairstyle. The school says it wasn't discrimination. I call BS. Out of Mont Belvieu, Texas, says a Black high school student in Texas has served more than 2 weeks of in-school suspensions for wearing twisted dreadlocks to school. When he arrived Monday with the same hairstyle, he was suspended again. That was from his mother. Daryl George, a junior at Barbers High School in Mont Belvieu, was initially suspended the same week his state outlawed racial discrimination based on hairstyles. Now, just to let you guys know, that outlawing based on hairstyles is called the Crown Act. And this has been implemented in many states within the United States, which is basically making it illegal to discriminate based on different ethnic hairstyles. Like for many of us, it may be afros, locks. Some people say dreadlocks. Some people say locks. Weaves, sew-ins, things like that are integral to African hair. Well, this also combats against being discriminated against that. So that's what the law that was recently passed. So it was passed in Texas as well. It says school officials said his dreadlocks fell below his eyebrows and earlobes and violated the district's dress code. George is 17 years old. He's been suspended since August 31st at the Houston area school. He was in tears when he was suspended Monday, despite his family's arguments that his hair does not violate the dress code, says his mother, Darisha George. Quote, he has to sit on a stool for 8 hours in a cubicle. That's very uncomfortable. Every day he come home, says his back hurts because he has to sit in a stool. Says the incident recalls debates over hair discrimination in schools, in the workplace, and is already testing the state's newly enacted Crown Act, which took off September 1st. The law, an acronym for Create a Respectful and Open World for Natural Hair, is intended to prohibit race-based hair discrimination and bars employers and schools from penalizing people because of their hair texture or protective hairstyles, including afros, braids, dreadlocks, twists, or Bantu knots. So this is what we as Black people like to call texturism. If you're not aware what texturism is, it is a way of discrimination based on our hair texture. Basically, how it grows out of our hair is being seen as unkept, dirty, even if we wash it and clean it. Like, let's say I wash and clean my hair, and then I just pick it out into a fro. Guess what? That can also be seen as unkept, too urban, or messy, right? That's how it's seen, even though my hair naturally just grows out this way. So that's basically what the discrimination comes from. So we actually had to pass a law prohibiting that type of discrimination, right? So it continues. It says Texas is one of the 24 states that have enacted the version of the Crown Act. A federal version of the Crown Act passed in the House of Representatives last year, but was not successful in the Senate. I wonder why. So it didn't pass in the Senate, but states have passed it. It says for Black people, hairstyles are more than just a fashion statement. Hair has always played an important role across the Black diaspora. This is from Candace Matthews, National Minister of Politics for the new Black Panther Nation. Her group is not affiliated with the new Black Panther organization, widely considered anti-Semitic. By the way, just to let anybody know, anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism are not the same thing. So if anybody speaks out against the state of Israel, that doesn't mean they're anti-Semitic. That means that we're anti-Zionist and that we also stand in unison and in league with Jewish people who also stand against the illegal occupation of Palestine, Gaza, the West Bank. So, anti-Semitic is discriminatory prejudice against Jewish people. Zionism, anti-Zionism is the rejection of oppression of indigenous peoples in Gaza and in Palestine by means of a Jewish state. So they're different. Just to let you guys know. So they may be conflating it, but make no mistake, I'm not going to conflate it here. But continuing on, it says dreadlocks are perceived as a connection to wisdom. This is not a fad, and this is not about getting attention. Here is our connection to our soul, our heritage, and our connection to God. It says in George's family, all the men have dreadlocks, going back generations. To them, the hairstyle has cultural and religious importance. She says, our hair is where our strength is. That is our roots. He has his ancestors locked into his hair, and he knows that. So this goes into his family tradition. So for him to be discriminated against, well, now you're basically pitting him against his family tradition. And so that's what's going on here. And they're saying, well, it goes below his eyebrows and it goes below his ears. Well, looking at the picture, it doesn't look like that. But even still, let's say hypothetically, it does go below his eyebrows or it does go below his ears, right? Why is that a problem? Why is that a policy? You see, the funny thing is that if a young woman decides to cut her hair short, it's not an issue because she can have it short if she wants, or she can have it long if she wants, right? But if young men grow their hair out, it's seen as bad, unkept, and dirty, especially for Black males. Let me share you guys something. Because I've had this gripe for quite a while now. And I think it's worth sharing my gripe with you guys, because a lot of times people will say, well, he should just comply with the code. But the code is kind of weird. I quote it. It says, after the suspension, his grades are suffering. He was on track to graduate early, and now he is falling behind and will have to work double time so he can still. That's a quote from the article. I said, if long hair is a quote unquote distraction, then why allow girls to wear it? Basically wearing long hair. This really goes in line with Eurocentric as well as heteronormative standards. If it's not a distraction for a girl to wear long hair, then why is it a distraction for a boy? And they'll say, well, it's about, you'll say it's about hygiene. So if it's about hygiene for boys, then why isn't it about hygiene for girls? Because if girls can keep proper hygiene with long hair, you don't think males can keep proper hygiene with long hair? Have you seen the process of cleaning locks? Locticians will teach you. They'll show you that people with locks, yeah, they have a process where they keep their locks clean. So it's easy. I wash my hair all the time. I can grow it out and still keep it clean. So what is there? It's interesting how they will discriminate in that way. So my question, though, is if we can no longer be discriminated against for the hairstyle in our hair in the workplace, then we shouldn't be discriminated against in schools either, because a lot of times people will say, well, this is trying to prepare them for the workplace. Well, the new law, you can't be discriminated against it anyway. So what's the point of trying to enforce keeping certain hairstyles for males like that? Doesn't make sense to me, to be honest with you. So let me share this because I want to point out how this is contradictory. And we'll get into one of my main points as well in the story.
Now to a developing story out of Texas. A Houston area high school suspending a black student for the second time this year because of his hairstyle. Now, as Antonia Hilton reports, the family is calling on the district to change its policy.
Daryl George, a high school junior, has been out of class for more than 2 weeks. The Barbers Hill Independent School District in Texas has suspended him twice since the start of the school year over his hairstyle.
His grades are failing, like they're going down drastically. He's not getting a proper education.
All Daryl wants is the chance to join the rest of his classmates.
Go back to class, do what I need to do to get my education.
The district says his hairstyle, called locks, violates their grooming code, which states that male students' hair will not extend at any time below the eyebrows or below the earlobes.
Let me ask you guys, where is it below his eyebrows or his earlobes? Show me in the photo where it's below his eyebrows or his earlobes. I'll wait. You guys know where this is going, don't you? By the way, side note, his locks are fire. I mean, damn, their loctician did a good job. Let's just be real. Daryl George, if you ever see this, your locks look good, bro. But I don't see a violation here. Do you? Do you see a violation here? I don't see. Weird to suspend somebody over something that's actually not there. Unless, well, you guys know. Let's continue.
But Daryl's mom says her son always wears his hair like this, pulled back above his ears and eyebrows. Now, the family is considering legal action.
I want them to really educate themselves on our cultures, on our hairstyles. And then they will see it is covered. It is a part of who we are.
It all happened the same week the Crown Act went into effect in Texas, banning acts of discrimination against certain hairstyles and textures in schools and workplaces. 22 other states have passed similar bills, the legislation gaining momentum after incidents like the 2018 scandal over a black wrestler forced to cut his hair.
Y'all remember this? I remember. Pepperidge Farm remembers. Guess what? All so that he can compete. But here's the funny thing. If you had a women's wrestling team, all the girls would need to do is just pull their hair back. Are they going to cut the women's hair? Oh, no. They would. Look, I'll even say this. Even if it was a young black woman and she had locks, would they be doing the same thing? It doesn't make sense. But when you start to think about it, it's always rooted in anti-blackness. Always.
Compete.
The school says this is really about the length of his hair. It's not about race. Do you see that distinction?
We're dealing with the policing of a hairstyle like locks, braids, and twists that African descendants historically and commonly wear and are associated with our racial and cultural identities. It is a form of racial discrimination.
Today, the district filed a lawsuit seeking court clarification on the Crown Act. They maintain they're not in violation of the new law, which they argue doesn't govern hair length. Meanwhile, Daryl has no plans to change his hair.
I'm saying straight to Barbara's Hill. We're not backing down at all. We're going to fight.
Antonia Hilton, NBC News, New York.
So let's share the actual footage. And how they violated the Crown Act. So this is the raw footage that happened when they confronted the school and a spokesperson came out to talk to them about what happened.
Okay, so I have a question.
There's the email too, and it's also accessible.
Well, I have a question. Are you aware that they have Caucasian students with dreads? This one? And his hair is dreads. He's Caucasian, and he's not an ISS. So are y'all gonna put him in too?
Now, this lady representing them took a photo of the student that came in, of a student that came into the office that was white with dreadlocks that was hanging past his neck. That's what she's showing him a picture of. A white student with dreadlocks with hair longer than Daryl's. And he is not suspended. You cannot tell me that this is rooted in anti-blackness. You cannot tell me that. And she's showing him. And he's like, well, I don't know if he doesn't go to school here. He's literally a teenager that's in the office. That's literally going back to class. And you're saying, well, I don't know if he's a student here. I'll have to look into it. Really? Really, dog? Is that what you're going with? And they're literally suspending this young man. This is a long video. This video is like 10 minutes long. I'm going to share it in the chat. But yo, they're literally doing this to this kid all because he has locks. And the Crown Act was passed in Texas. And they're violating the Crown Act. Now, there's a part that I also want to harp on, because this point is really what I want to make. Let me share it right here. Because this is the point that I think people really need to focus in on. Darisha George, the mother of Daryl George, says, "My son is well-groomed and his hair is not distracting from anyone's education. This has everything to do with administration being prejudiced towards Black hairstyles, towards Black culture." It says the district defends its dress code, which says its policies are meant to teach grooming and hygiene, instill discipline, prevent disruption, and avoid safety hazards, and teach respect for authority. Let me ask you this. If it's a safety hazard for young men to have long hair, then it's a safety hazard for young women to have long hair. If it's a grooming issue for men to have long hair, young men to have long hair, then it's also a grooming issue for young women to have long hair. Oh, but it's somehow it's okay, right? But another point, I wanted to point out is that it says here, after the suspension, quote, his grades are suffering, which also means he's not able to play football or participate in any extracurriculars. He was on track to graduate early, and now he's falling behind and will have to work double time just so that he can still graduate. This is the implementation and intersection of class and race. Because now you're interfering with this young man's future just because of a hairstyle. When Black people, especially those of us on the left, say that class and race intersect, here you go. Here's another example. Because you have a white kid with dreadlocks going to that school, and he's not facing disciplinary action, and he's still able to get his education and continue. But God forbid, a young Black man that has really nice locks, by the way, that's done very nicely, tastefully, but yet he gets suspended because they say it violates the code, which it does not. This is the point. That if we try to express ourselves and our own individuality, it is looked down upon. And our livelihoods, career, job prospects are also always threatened. How many Black women in the chat? I want you guys to tell me how your jobs will look at your hair and discriminate you based on your hair. I got a story right now to tell you. A couple weeks back, I was watching the news. And in the news report, there was a Black woman that was an anchor on TV at the news desk. She had braids, plaits to be exact. I was shocked, gobsmacked, I tell you, because she had plaits, braids on live news. Why was I surprised? Why was I shocked? Because her hair wasn't relaxed. Her hair wasn't straightened. Her hair wasn't flat ironed. It was in braids. On national local television. And a lot of Black women were not able to wear that hairstyle a couple years back. They look down on you for that. They look down on you for having an afro. They look down on you if you have Bantu knots. Anything resemble just showing our Africanness off, it was looked down upon. When was the last time you saw Oprah with an afro? I bet you if she got that hair wet, she would have it. But she dare not. Because guess what? She couldn't get a job with an afro. Confirmation. Boom. Savvy. She said that's right. Boom. Here you go. Black woman saying this. Some corporate positions won't allow natural hairstyles. By the way, boom. Relaxers are horrible for your health too. Can we talk about the lawsuit for L'Oreal? How a lot of these hair relaxers are now causing cancers in Black women? I don't know white women who wear relaxers. I know a shit ton of Black women who wear relaxers. My mom being one of them. Thank God she hasn't relaxed her hair in years. But we will literally put our health at risk. Black women have putting their health at risk just so that they can have that job. They will wear wigs, weaves, sew-ins, just so that they won't show off their natural hair, just so that they can have that job. They will take that hot comb and burn their edges just so that they can work behind that desk. And you don't think that class and race intersect? What? Yes, they intersect. And it even goes to how we wear our hair and our jobs. And it's not like, oh, well, you can't fit an afro underneath that cap. Sometimes I honestly think that they will force you to wear caps just so that they can discriminate against you wearing your hair naturally. But that's a whole nother conversation. Oh, well, this cap is part of your uniform. You have to wear it. But I have an afro. Well, sorry, you can't wear your hair naturally. All right? Sabi says when she worked in Baltimore, they made her change it when she got the anchor position in Chicago. Talking about Oprah. And you don't think this still doesn't go on to this day? Oh, my sweet summer child. It definitely still goes on to this day. Colin says school expressions only allow for Lisa Frank and Trapper Keeper. Y'all remember Trapper Keepers? I'm showing my age now, but I remember them. But yeah, so that's the thing that we are constantly being told, is that we cannot be ourselves within the workplace. We have to go by a Eurocentric standard in order to be able to make a living. And that's what's happening to this young man just for wearing his hair in its natural form. So this is what also worker solidarity means. That if you see somebody who looks like me being discriminated against because of our hair, you as a white person, speak out. Speak out and say, yeah, no, that's wrong. Because if I wear my hair long, I don't have anybody have a problem with it. But if somebody black wears their hair long, especially if they're male, then there's an issue. Speak out. Use your privilege in that way. Whoever says that's blatant racism right there, there's no way around it. Thank you so very much. Whoever continues says, graduate this young man early, fire the old white racist, and hire the young man to do the job instead. Obviously, he'd do a better job. Well, yeah, whoever says those things they just prevented this guy from doing will F up his chances of getting scholarships to colleges too. Yeah. They're messing up his chances of having a successful life, economically. They just call cornrows French braids when you're white. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Marco says, I remember that scene from Malcolm X movie where he gets the relaxer and can't find water. I'm like, damn, Malcolm was tough as nails. That had to hurt. Yeah, that's what happens. Rick Solis says, again, this goes back to the colonizer mindset. They have to have control over people, fall in, and basic pull over people fall in line. Thank you so very much for that as well. And yes, the intent is to ruin his chances financially. Yep. Absolutely. That's basically what it is. All right. So again, please make sure to give a like for the stream. And thank you to anybody and everybody for any of the chats. Appreciate it very, very much. Okay. So we're going to our final story, priced out. So why is there a vulture with the label of real estate investors? We're about to get into this regarding what's happened in Maui. And a lot of the comrades have also talked about this right now in the last few weeks. But this is getting even worse in regards to what happened in Lahaina, and particularly. So these issues in Lahaina keep going from bad to worse. The burning of their town and pricing them out seems like an intended consequence to take over the former Kingdom of Hawaii capital, to put it into greedy corporate and wealthy landowners' hands. So I'm going to share this article and we will get into it. So let's go here to this. It says Hawaii economists say Lahaina locals could be priced out of rebuilding town without zoning changes. That's right. Gentrification going on. It says residents who survived the wildfire that leveled the Hawaii town of Lahaina might not be able to afford to live there after it's rebuilt unless officials alter zoning laws and make other changes, economists warned on Friday. The risk is very real. That was from Carl Bonham, executive director of University of Hawaii Economic Research Organization. Says soaring housing prices have already forced many native Hawaiians and other longtime Hawaii residents to leave the islands and to move to U.S. mainland. The wildfire that claimed at least 97 lives and destroyed 2,200 buildings in West Maui community of Lahaina, 86%, which were residential, amplifies the problem for survivors. Nearly 8,000 of them have been placed at 40 hotels or other accommodations around the island of Maui. So really, it is when it rains, it pours. Says market prices for the new housing are likely to far exceed the already high prices that existed in Lahaina before the fire. For renters, the old housing stock that was destroyed provided opportunities for reasonable rents. So this is from the economic report. So prices are already out of sight. They are insane right now. So I'm going to share with you guys the rent prices. So that has happened. Well, that is really shows you how bad it is in places like Lahaina. Hawaii is literally one of the top states in regards to rent prices. So I'm going to share this with you guys. So this is out of reach. Let me enlarge this just a little bit. Oh, did I go a little too far? Yeah. Okay. So this is Hawaii. This is the number 2 most highest state for rent prices. It says in Hawaii, the fair market rent for a 2-bedroom apartment is $2,175. In order to afford this level of rents and utilities without paying more than 30% of income on housing, a household must earn $7,251 monthly or $87,013 annually. Assuming a 40-hour work week, 52 weeks per year, this level of income translates to an hourly housing wage of $41.83 an hour just to afford a 2-bedroom. So you have to work 139 work hours per week at minimum wage to afford a 2-bedroom house or home in Hawaii, or 107 hours per week to afford a 1-bedroom. But the minimum wage in Hawaii is $12 an hour. So, and the average winter wage is about half of what you need in order to survive. Look, let me shrink this just a little so you guys can see everything. And Honolulu is one of the most expensive areas at $43.21 per hour. Kauai County at $41.31. Kahului, Wailuku, Lahaina is $38.19. So Lahaina is one of the most expensive areas in Hawaii to afford. And this is why they are being priced out as we speak. Because now that their properties burned down, where can they go? Now you have these vultures coming in and saying, heard your house got burned down. You know how does that has to make you feel? It's crazy. So I'm going to share this video here because it's wild how a lot of people are being priced out of this area and how many people it started playing before stop playing. Go back. Okay. Let me share this video. And it's entitled Lahaina is Not for Sale. So this gives you on the ground of what's going on.
Residents are using social media to warn each other about realtors attempting to buy land from wildfire victims.
Investors and realtors calling the families who lost their home, offering to buy their land. How dare you?
Over 4,500 people in Maui were displaced by the fires, but the island, just like the rest of the state, has been facing a housing crisis for years. This is in large part due to people buying vacation homes and rental properties, pricing Native Hawaiians and local-born residents out of many areas. Earlier this week, Hawaii's Democratic Governor Josh Green discussed the attempts made by realtors to buy land from victims and suggested a pause on sales of properties that were affected by the fires.
I've actually reached out to our Attorney General to explore options to do a moratorium on any sales of properties that have been damaged or destroyed. It's going to be a very long time before any growth or housing can be built. And so you will be pretty poorly informed. You try to steal land from our people.
Last week's wildfire killed at least 111 people, and officials have said that more than 1,000 people are still unaccounted for. Over 2,200 structures were also destroyed or damaged, leaving thousands displaced.
Move away. We've already been displaced so much. Let investors and sharks and realtors across the world know that Lahaina.
Wild. But wait, there's more. So let me go back to the article. Ooh, okay. This is just class warfare by the wealthy. They see that these poor residents whose home got burned down are as desperate. So they will flash some cash, which is insignificant in the grand scheme of things, and expect the residents to see out the desperation, to sell out of desperation and duress. So this is a sick and twisted thing that's happening. The moment that they sell, the residents won't have the money to be able to afford to live in Lahaina, even though they've been there for generations. Imperialism and colonialism hasn't stopped in Hawaii. So let me share this part of the article as well. Make sure I get to the part that I need. Okay. It says Bonham said policy changes and a concerted effort are needed to prevent a rebuilt Lahaina from becoming a haven exclusively for the wealthy. For the example, by changing zoning to allow smaller and more affordable housing units like duplexes and apartments. Quote, we need to be seriously focusing on multifamily housing. That's the way you get housing that isn't $1 million plus homes. You've got to have more density. Currently, only about 1% of the land in Lahaina's burned area is zoned for multifamily housing. The new economic report said that the post-disaster plunge in tourism to Maui has hit the island's economy and people hard. Officials initially told prospective tourists to stay away from Maui. Visitors' arrival dropped by nearly 3/4, the report said. In the weeks after the fire, Maui lost more than $13 million per day in visitor spending. With businesses lacking customers, layoffs resulted. So people are actually being laid off. This paragraph proves why local politics is so important, as well as zoning laws that can favor people and workers, environmentally safety and efficient infrastructure. Otherwise, the rich will just grab whatever they want and use zoning laws to limit the bottom 99%. This is also why central planning model is necessary and is approved by the people and not by the rich landowners and landlords. So This is why when natural disasters like this happen, public money should be poured into areas like this so that people can survive off of a stipend, and the money should be used as a tool to rebuild. Tourism, in my opinion, should stop so at least 65% of rebuilding is done so that people won't visit and get in the way. If the federal government took part of that $24 billion that was sent to Ukraine and put 10% of it into Lahaina, they could rebuild fast and take care of the people through Medicare for all and fund reconstruction of homes and businesses. But they don't want to because of capitalism. If you think about it, just take that money, put it in the hands of the people, get construction crews into Lahaina, and rebuild the housing. Wait, JB, just give the money to them so that they can rebuild the house? Yes. I don't care if they had housing. I don't care if they had home insurance or not. I don't care if they have fire insurance or not. The entire town is burnt down. If we can, let me get this down. If we can take public dollars and send tons of money to Ukraine, which was just brought out in CBS News, how it's not just money for tanks and missiles and ammo to the Ukrainian military, but it's also grain and healthcare and all these things they're helping Ukraine out with. But yet we can't do the same thing. We cannot help rebuild Lahaina. And please don't come at me with, well, we don't have the money for it. Yes, we do. Ukraine got it. What happened in 2021 where they dumped $4 trillion into the stock market to prop up the markets? You don't think we can't do that for Lahaina? Just rebuild the homes and businesses that were burnt down? We could do it. We could definitely do it. We don't need to have the businesses operate. We could subsidize, we literally could afford to subsidize the businesses in those areas so that they can stay afloat. And the people who are employed, because the businesses are burned down, well, we can keep them with their paychecks coming and then use those same public dollars to rebuild the home. Okay, what was the square footage of your home? How much did your home cost? Okay, this is how much it will cost to clear the area and rebuild the home. All right, for each person in that area, how much will it cost? Okay, this many billion. Okay, fine. Rebuild it. Subsidize the businesses. Okay, you're a business owner. How much does it cost for your business? How much does it cost for that building? All right, we will pay the cost to rebuild it. How much all the supplies in your of your business cost? Okay, that's how much in supplies as well as stock that you had in your store. Okay, we'll pay for all that. Then rebuild it all. Start them back from where they were from when the fire started. Give them all single-payer health care. Make sure all the people in Lahaina are taken care of, right? Because you have health issues from having that much fire around you. Some people may have gotten burned. Some people may have smoke inhalation. Some people, had to stay in that water, may have gotten hypothermia from being in water for that long, what have you. All this could be done. And here's the thing. I'm not that brilliant. I'm not that smart. And even I think of all this stuff. Imagine what they could think of. They could take the Army Corps of Engineers, come in there and rebuild Lahaina. And then say, look, Lahaina's closed until further notice. No tourists. And people who conduct tours, guess what? You'll be subsidized in the meantime. We'll give you 80% of what you guys were making, right? We'll subsidize you until Lahaina is 65% built. Once it's 65% built, then we'll reopen. But we don't want tourists getting in the way. No new tourists. No new people can move in. No. Sorry. Lahaina's closed. And they could do that. But somehow, some way, it's like, well, no, we got to put capitalism first. So now, guess what? That same waters where people died in trying to flee the fires, well, they're going to allow them to be able to do tours and go snorkeling. They're going to get in the way of their construction. It is wicked and wild how they allow this to happen. And then you have these real estate investors, aka vultures, coming in trying to buy it up just so that they can gentrify the town of Lahaina. It's sad. It's crazy. So why in the world? No wonder why Native Hawaiians are like, don't come. Native Hawaiians are still fighting imperialism and colonialism. Even though Hawaii is considered a state now, they're still fighting colonialism and imperialism. Because these vultures still keep trying to take hold of that part of Hawaii and wanting to price the people out. People wonder why we say land back. Because people are sick and tired of having their ancestral land taken away and stolen. I think this is egregious. They can do so much better than this. Says the U.S. Department of Labor extended the application filing for deadline disaster unemployment insurance by 1 month to October 16th. Hawaii's Department of Labor and Industrial Relations announced on Friday. Individuals that do not qualify for regular unemployment insurance may be eligible for DUA benefits. But why should they have to apply, though? Why not just cover all the residents? Because even if your house survived the fire, doesn't mean your job did. Doesn't make sense. But when has ever a government that's being dominated by capitalists ever made sense? Just doesn't. Let us go to the chat. Frank Johnson, thank you so much for the super chat. Says, how can they get away with that? Because the government allows them to, because the government's their lackey. Government is like a hammer. It could be used to build or it could be used to destroy. A lot of times when all the time, when government is in the hand of a capitalist, in the hands of a billionaire, it's used to destroy. It destroys the workers. It destroys the environment. That's what happens. Because they will use government in that way. They will wield government like a hammer to smash the environment and workers to pieces. Versus when government or that hammer is in the hands of the workers, we build with it. We build things that will last us. We build things that will help us to not only survive, but to thrive in the system. That's the point. But if you build to survive and thrive, that means that there's equality, equity, and justice that is taking place. Equality, equity, and justice are not profitable to the owner class, because that means that they have less, which means if the workers have more, that's a problem for them. That's why the system needs to be changed from the ground up. So yeah, that's how they're able to get away with that. But thank you very much, Frank Johnson. Yes, gamer, capitalists don't care about workers or poor in general. That's absolutely true. Good to see a CBC voter. Nice to have you in the chat. Tracy G says, if you follow MMT, then you know that we have the money to pay for whatever we need. Yeah. We create the money and the entire world trades in the dollar, and there's nothing stopping this but greed. Well, really, it's just those dollars are being hoarded in a small sector of our population. And I know people are going to look at me weird like this, but the people who are hoarding the money, they shouldn't have it. Grab them by the ankles and shake the money out. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to keep my mouth shut so I won't get in trouble. Creator Experiment says, have you seen the TV show White Lotus? No, never heard of it. Thank you. Killia Grigor says, what's the real death count? It's more than 200, I'm sure. I heard it was going up to 1,000. That's what people on the ground were saying, but who knows? Whoever says no one should have more money than they can spend in a lifetime. Yeah. Mizu says, have you seen the footage of those buildings? They're just outright falling apart. Well, a lot of times they'll build these buildings so that they won't last that long, because if you build them to last, well, the construction companies, well, how are they going to make more money if they build buildings that are very efficient and built to last a long time? Bryce Smith says, that's some New Jack City shit. Shake the money out, buy their leg. Sit your $5 ass down before I make change. I want to say that to a billionaire. Oh my gosh. That's what I want to say to them. So yeah, I went over time, baby, but I'm glad I got to have this stream. And oh my gosh, today actually went better than I thought. Today actually went a lot more. You know how sometimes you plan on having a decent day, but then your day actually gets even better. Like what? So yeah. So just so that people know, I'm going to be going live on Thursday. So I'll be going live on Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, just so that you guys are aware. And I will be talking about a recent thing that just happened in Canada. They embracing Nazis out here, y'all. So I wrote an article in Substack, if you guys have not taken a look already. This is from Jaybefaunt Stream of Consciousness on Substack. It says, why Black people should pay attention to the proxy war in Ukraine. Subheading says, there is a sympathetic undercurrent for Nazis and fascism that should give Black people pause in Western nations. The time to wake up is now. I wrote this article. I'm going to let y'all know right now, I am not that great of a writer, but I put my thoughts and opinions into this article. So if you guys would like to, you guys can read that. But yes, I will be talking about this on Thursday because this is crazy. they're literally embracing Nazism, and they are becoming way too soft. So I'll be giving that a discussion, and I hope you guys will be able to be available for that as well. And I'll be covering other news stories as well on that day. Oh, I forgot. By the way, just to let you guys know, if you guys have not seen, I was doing mutual aid work on Saturday with the RBN Orlando chapter, Revolutionary Blackout Network Orlando chapter. And so we had an amazing time. It was bittersweet. And so actually, let me mute that and just keep playing. So we had an amazing time. And one of the things that we were talking about was how it was bittersweet because we had all these supplies. As you can see, that was just half the supplies. We literally made 100 care packages, and we expected to deliver about 80 or so in Lake Eola, but we end up delivering over probably around 85. So we deliver over 4 times what we expected. And there was a gentleman that was homeless that we actually encountered while we were out there in Lake Eola that said that he never heard anybody speak about mutual aid the way I did. And the thing is that a lot of people, especially those who are homeless, need to realize that the situation that they're in, it is not their fault. And so that's one thing I expressed to them. That is not their fault that they're out there like that. The thing is that the system needs people to be homeless in order for there to be an unequalizing taking place so that you have a small group of people at the top who have the most. So that's why they're in that position in the first place. So put that out to them and you make that known, then what ends up happening is they realize that they are really victims of a system that is keeping them in that spot. And it's not saying that people shouldn't work or people shouldn't, provide for themselves. People do that naturally, right? Nobody really just sits there and does nothing and expects everything handed to them. Well, except billionaires. But naturally, humans actually want to do for themselves. The problem is that there's an exploitation taking place. And so this is something that I wanted to make that abundantly clear to our homeless and houseless neighbors that were out there. And so this is what was happening. Just wanted to share what happened when we got to Terry Avenue. And let me share this.
All of our care packages, but we still have cold water left. And so we're going to give away all of the rest of the water. We also have condoms too. We're going to be giving those away just for the people. So then they can at least have something to keep from having a heat stroke. It's just horrible.
So that was another issue that a lot of people think about. Like, for instance, Sabi's going to be having a action on the 18th of November. Rome from RBN will also be down there with her. They'll be doing tent clinics and trying to give out, warm clothes and things like that. For us down here in Florida, because it is so hot and humid, the risk is on the flip side. So the risk for people is heat, humidity, heat strokes. It gets extremely hot down here. And so that's the other side of the coin for people who are homeless in Florida. Does it get extremely cold here? No. But does it get extremely hot here? Yes. And so it is just horrific what they're going through. So this is the homeless campment that's on Terry Avenue in downtown.
water too?
So we ran out of care packages. So all we had left was cold water. And that's how much of a need there is for things like this in this area.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're cutting breaks now.
So this is why mutual aid is so important. It literally saves lives. Will we be able to claim on our taxes for giving to these people? No. That's not the goal. Will we be able to make more money off of doing this? That's not the goal. And no. The goal is solidarity, not just in our hearts, but also materially. That's the point. These are some of the actions that people like Chairman Omali Yeshitela and the African People's Socialist Party engage in all the time, is through mutual aid action so that they can help upbuild their community. I think that's the point where a lot of people are realizing now. So this is what's important, is doing mutual aid for the people. And also, while you're doing mutual aid, I think what's really important as well is to ask the people what they need. Ask them. Don't just assume, don't just center yourself. Ask them what they need. Because a lot of times we will think, oh, well, this is what we need. Even if you've been homeless yourself before. Yes, use that knowledge, but also ask them what they need when you're on the ground. So do what you can. And it doesn't also have to always be monetarily. You can give of your energy. You can give of your time, your expertise in different areas. I think that's one of the most important parts of seeing and doing mutual aid. So I just want to say that I appreciate all the members. Shout out to all the members of the Orlando chapter of Revolutionary Blackout Network, Sabiha, Cam, Kevin, Lance. Thank you for coming out and joining us as well. So thank you for joining and just being out there with us in the heat and doing what we can for the people, for our neighbors. Because how many people are actually doing this work? That's the thing I want to change. And that's the thing I want to increase, is making it so more people are doing this type of work. So yeah, thank you so very much. Selassie I says, wait, how can I get involved in Orlando? I was doing some applications through Google Docs earlier, but keep an eye on this channel, especially when I do community posts on this channel. I will also be letting people know when we will be meeting up again so that we can plan for the next actions, so that you guys are aware. I'll try to do it at least a couple weeks out so that you guys are aware, so you guys can show up, and we'll let you guys know where we will be. Most likely next time we do an action, we will be starting out in Terry Avenue in downtown Orlando at that homeless camp, so that they will get the care packages first, so that we will go there and then spread out. So just letting you know that now, so that people can be aware of what we're going to be doing. So yes, we will be expanding this as far as we can to increase the numbers so that more people can get help, because the most vulnerable among us need the assistance, because this system will not do it. So thank you very much for that question. That's a really good question. I appreciate it. So yes, that's what happened. I meant to tell you guys about that. And I almost forgot, but thank you so very much for reminding me about that. So yes, I am way past my time, but look, thank you so very much to everybody for tuning in. If you have not, then you guys can also go to my Substack for email notifications, jaybefaunt.substack.com. And on your way out, please make sure to like the stream. Just to let you guys know, I also have a merch store. So if you guys can see underneath, you guys can go to shop. You guys can go to my merch store on Bonfire. I also have that. Also, special shout out to new patrons, Jacqueline Hemmings and Jennifer. Thank you so very much to the new patrons on there for Patreon. Appreciate it so very much to all of you for supporting the channel as well. The links to my Patreon as well as to my PayPal is also in the description below, or is pinned to the top of the chat as well. So thank you so very much to everybody. Look, it's like I always say, water your plants, water yourselves, leave the world better than you found them. Smoke them if you got them, drink them if you got them. If you ain't got them, then watch something funny or read something funny, because joy is revolutionary. Always try to find joy in life, and also have joy in the process. I enjoyed myself when I was out there doing mutual aid. The joy is in the process and helping people. Smile, shake hands, let them know that they matter, right? That's the point. And just make their lives better, and even in small ways. Even just sharing kind words with people and letting them know how much they matter to you. Even if you don't know them personally, let them know that they matter as a human being on this planet. I think that's the point that I wanted to convey to you. Also, thank you so much again to Chairman Omali Yeshitela for joining. It was a pleasure and it was a privilege to have him with us, a revolutionary that has been doing the work for decades. So thank you so much to him. And also solidarity with Daryl George. I do hope that you continue your education and are able to persevere despite the anti-blackness and and the classism that is being displayed within your school. Unfortunately, you're going through this, but I hope you triumph among this. So thank you so very much. Solidarity with all the people in Lahaina. And do not give in to what these vultures are doing. Stay and keep your ground. You have people like me who are standing with you. Love and solidarity to all the indigenous peoples around the world. All of you. You guys, my heart is with you. And to all the workers, unite. All right? And forehead kisses to every single one of you. I will also be getting into reading for Laziness Does Not Exist by Dr. Devon Price, as well as Assata Shakur's autobiography. We're finishing up Assata Shakur's autobiography, man. It's going to be exciting that when we finish. So stay tuned for that. And last word, uhuru.